Hello, everyone. My name is Brianne. I work for 21 Acres as their administrative assistant, and I'm excited to welcome you to our homesteading series with Hawthorn Farm. And thank you, as always, to Daniel and Alexia, our homesteading educators, for teaching us today and throughout the last year on a variety of topics that relate to sustainable living, everything from seed to harvest and cooking to fermentation, along with all that goes into maintaining a regenerative homestead and community. We're really lucky and excited to work with them. And they are here in Woodinville, Washington. I'll give a formal land acknowledgement in a moment too. But yes, we're excited to learn from Daniel and Alexia, who have been homesteading, eating primarily their own food for many years. It's really amazing. I love hearing their journey. And they also have some wonderful youth education programs at their farm homestead. And I encourage you to check them out. I'll give you a link to their website in the chat. I'd like to give a formal land acknowledgement to where we are today. 21 Acres and Hawthorn Farm are both located in Woodinville, Washington, on the ancestral lands of Indigenous nations, including the Stillaguamish tribes, the Duwamish, and the Coast Salish peoples. We acknowledge these nations as the original stewards of this land, and we acknowledge and honor both the land itself and the Coast Salish people, past and present. And we appreciate you joining us to take a moment to honor this land with us and to learn how we're attempting and doing a fun job of stewarding this land for future generations. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to our wonderful educators, and I will be hiding in the chat box. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rianne, for that introduction. Again, my name is Daniel and
Alexia.
And we are co-stewards of Hawthorn Farm, which you can see a little bit of in the background, which is a collection of animals and plants and wild ones and other humans and houses and structures that make up a fairly edible and hopefully getting more and more regenerative and sustainable landscape. I kind of wish that I could see each of you in person, and yet I'm really grateful for this opportunity to share some of our stories across the miles through the power of the internet and video. And I think that's been one of the blessings of COVID for us, is that we're actually telling our stories and sharing some of the lessons we've learned over the years with more people than we were in past times. And actually, the first time we did the rabbitry class with 21 Acres, it was in person right at the beginning of the pandemic outbreak, and just barely into it. And that was the last in-person class we did there. So I'm grateful to have this opportunity to share with you all. Hawthorn Farm, we call it a farmstead, and it's grown out of a question and an experiment that Alexia and I enacted starting about, for the two of us together, about 10 years ago. And for Alexia, about 17 years ago. And the question was, and still is, how do we feed ourselves beautifully? How do we live in a beautiful way that enables that possibility for all the rest of the humans and the creation, both now in the present and in the future? And how do we eat well-storied food? And the enactment of our answer to that question, or one version of that, started in 2011 when we challenged ourselves to eat for a couple of days with just food that we had obtained with our own hands and with our own labor. For 2 full days, nothing store-bought, nothing packaged, nothing coming in from somewhere else that we didn't have the story of. And that experiment grew into a food challenge that we enacted over the next 7 years, from 2011 to 2017. And in 2017, for an entire year, we had grown, collected, harvested, scavenged, scrounged, foraged, found, dried, bought, canned, froze enough food to feed ourselves and other people for an entire year. Every single bite, including the salt, had a story from soil to our mouths, to our plates, that we could get behind. That was a beautiful story. And that was a lot of work. And it was a beautiful work, and it took a while. Like I said, from 2011 to 2017. And through that process, the landscape here at Hawthorn Farm changed from a suburban, ex-farm, becoming lawns and overgrown hedges and lots of weeds, to animal structures and fertile gardens and compost beds and composting toilets and hoop houses and greenhouses and on and on. And so this series is a series to share the lessons and stories from these past years, these past 10 years of living on a farmstead. And we call it a farmstead because it's our home and our homestead, and we feed more people than just ourselves. And that includes others like wild birds and wild mammals and others than just the human two-leggeds. So today, the conversation is around rabbits and raising rabbits specifically for meat, for eating rabbits. And so I'm guessing if people are joining this call or watching in the future, that you are interested in raising rabbits for meat. Of course, the conversation around meat eating and around what kind of meat to eat and how to eat meat could be fraught with a lot of different tangents and difficulties. And I don't think we'll get too much into the politics of eating today. Hopefully just the scale is how to raise rabbits at home. So I'm going to go and grab my clipboard, get on the other side of the camera, and share a little bit more about rabbits. Do you want to say anything in the beginning?
Oh, it sounds good so far.
Thank you.
I'm going to be working the camera, so you won't see me too much. I'll just be trying to figure it out.
Right. Perfect. Also, just thinking about the future, I love when you guys mentioned that you also were able to harvest your own salt. I think we should do a class on that in the future. Maybe if that
too exciting, but yeah.
Yeah. It's just so cool. Okay. Thanks.
Well, in our food challenge preparation, Alexia and I started with what was easy: chickens and ducks and goats. And one of our housemates at the time, who we call Farmily, decided to start raising rabbits right next to her little cabin. And I got interested in watching how did that go? How did she enjoy it? How did that work? How were the rabbits? And one day I was out on a trip out of town, and Alexia called me on the phone, and we were talking as I was returning back to the farm. And she said to me, "Hey, what do you think about us getting rabbits? Like, Gesenia's been doing it, and how would you like to raise rabbits? Our neighbor Mary is selling her breeding stock, and it could be kind of cool, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think that would be okay." And then Alexia was like, "Oh, good, because I've already got them and they're in the barn." And so I came home to a rabbitry in the barn. And there were some thrown together cages. There were the cages that they gave us and a few cages that other people had given us. And I started watching how the rabbits were taken care of. And pretty soon I started helping with feeding and the daily care of the rabbits. And then pretty soon I was like, I think we can do a little bit better on the structure. And I upgraded the rabbit structures. And then I was like, I think we could make this even better and actually grow our rabbitry even larger and produce more meat. And so then I upgraded again and came up with some mobile tractors. And that's kind of how we got started. We chose rabbits because they are small, They are easy to take care of. They're beautiful. They're pleasant to be around. They're quiet. They're friendly. They're gentle. They attract children. Children love them. They have a pretty simple life cycle. And from what I've read, the conversion of feed to meat, and that ratio of conversion is the best for any meat producing animal that's domestically raised. I'm not sure about that research or didn't need to track it down too much, but what I do know is we don't have enough ground to raise cows, for instance. We don't have enough ground to raise lots of goats or sheep. And we still want to eat meat since we live in a northern climate and work a lot. So for us, it's like, how do we eat meat in a way that works for the landscape that we live in? So I'm going to offer some of what we do to take care of our rabbits, knowing that the situation may be different based on your climate, your time scale, your landscape, your bioregion, the available feed, the available breeds. That all depends on the place where you live and your design hopes and considerations. So sharing our story, knowing that all the parts may not fit for your needs if you're going to start keeping rabbits. So rabbits actually naturally occur in the region where we live, and actually rabbits occur in lots of places all around the world. Someone had asked a question in before the event about raising wild rabbits. Domestic animals came about from someone asking from some ancestral person somewhere asking, what if we started keeping those a little closer and making them more accessible? The species that we are raising right now is, what is it,
It's the European rabbit.
European rabbit. And they've made their way over to the United States, and there's quite a variety of breeds, just like in chickens, where people have selected rabbits for certain characteristics and traits. Sometimes the rate of growth, sometimes how their fur looks, sometimes how much meat they have on the carcass, or how the meat is distributed. I wish I could say that we were super thoughtful about which breeds we chose, but actually we just chose the ones that were most readily available and were best for meat, because that's what our goal is to eat rabbit meat. And rabbits also have the potential, because they naturally occur here, to eat what grows here. Our rabbits get, as I'll show you later, a lot of things that we grow and a lot of things that naturally grow here on the pasture and in the forests of this place. So I think that's a consideration too. Better than, say, like chickens, maybe not quite as good as goats. Rabbits can eat from the place that we live.
And you, of course, also keep them away from your delicious things like carrots. Or do you, I am excited to learn what kind of food you like to share with them, or the great combination of foods you found that make them the most delicious and happy.
I think what we'll do now is we'll take you on a cycle through the life of a rabbit at Hawthorn Farm, and through our rabbitry system, and we'll just go through it step by step. Now we'll see how this works, if you can follow.
Yep.
So we have a dedicated place on the farm that is our rabbitry, the home of the rabbits. And we also have mobile cages that move in between gardens and different parts of the pasture so that we can move rabbits around. Anytime that you're raising a domestic animal in place, you either have to move the animals or move the poop, or both. And so in the design consideration on a farmstead, on a homestead, thinking about placement because of moving the animals and moving the poop. Where is the best placement on your setup? If you live in an apartment, probably on the porch is going to be the best setup. But if you have some acreage, you know, where is the best place to put your rabbitry? We decided to put ours in a hoop house that's right next to a garden, so we could have a quick movement of the nutrients that come out of the rabbits and go into the garden, and that comes out of the garden and goes into the rabbits. So right here we have a mobile rabbit pen called a rabbit tractor at sometimes. And in this rabbit pen is one of our beautiful male breeders named Assam. All of our male breeders have tea names like Oolong, Bancha, Assam, Earl Grey. And Assam is an American Chinchilla. That's the breed we've chosen. And the males live in a cage all by themselves. Right now, they're out on summer pasture. So they're either out in the lawns or they're out in the gardens in these mobile pens that I designed and built myself. We wanted a design that was lightweight, that prevented predators from getting in the sides or in the bottom, and that prevented the rabbits from escaping. So I don't know if it's visible to you all, but there's a strong 2x4 panel, steel panel in the bottom that's like a cattle panel cut up, and then there's 1x2 wire mesh wired together at the corners with wooden framing and a lightweight tarp cover on top. And these are really easy to move. You can move them by yourself, but you got to be careful of the rabbit's legs, or you can move them really easily with two people, one on each side, so they can just move gently a little bit at a time if you're by yourself. So what happens at Hawthorn Farm is that we have to breed the rabbits. One reason we chose meat rabbits over something like meat chickens is that we could do the breeding in-house rather than being dependent on a faraway supply chain of giant chicken breeding facilities and chicks flying in the mail. We wanted to bring the breeding in home, you know, from start to finish. So we had to get a male rabbit and a few female rabbits. So our male right here, he lives out on pasture, and we bring a female into him for a breeding. They mate, and we know what that looks like. We're not going to show that today. And then we bring the female back into the rabbitry where all of our breeding females live. And the gestation for a rabbit is 30 days. So if you got a successful breeding, 30 days later, plus or minus a day or a few hours, she will kindle. That's the term for rabbits giving birth. She will kindle anywhere from, for us, it's been 3 to 14 young called kits. And I will show you a nest box that we have some young that just kindled last week. So each of our breeding females has their own cage with their name and when they were born and who they were bred to and what kind of care they get. And this female right here, Biscuit, bred to Earl Grey on the 2nd of April. And she gave birth in this nest box, which we put in just a couple of days before she was set to give birth. And she gave birth to warm, live young, these little, beautiful,
Oh my gosh.
little beautiful kits. And they're born blind, so they feel around when their mom gets to nurse. They feel around until they find the right spot. And she covers them with her own belly fur, and then she takes care of them for a month, and they grow really quickly, like amazingly quickly. Within a month, they can be weaned. So those were born the 2nd or 3rd of May, which was like last week, or maybe early this week. and they're just a few days old, just like less than a week old. And in a month, they're going to be this big. We don't have any right here to show you that are that big, but at a month old, they move into a cage by themselves. They get weaned. And if you were doing a quick cycle, you could breed your female again right then, or even before then. And she would kindle again in another month, ideally. But we wait another month. We give her a month off before asking her to kindle again. And each day, somebody's got to come through. So somebody asked the question about what does it take in terms of work for raising rabbits. Each day, somebody comes through and checks the water and the food and the condition of the cages, and adds in the summer either green food harvested from the land, or in the winter hay in between the cages in these slots. And the rabbits can pull through and eat free choice green food, either hay or greens. And then also we put in branch wood that the rabbits eat the leaves off of, if there are any leaves, and then also eat the bark off of. And they get nutrients from the inner bark, which is what wild rabbits do. You know that if you've ever planted a fruit tree, you got to put protection around the base of the fruit tree, because wild rabbits and voles will come and nibble the bottom of the fruit tree and girdle the tree, eat the bark out from around it. So when we harvest browse for our goats, the branches cut just to the same size as our wood stove, because these are later going to be, as they would say in Britain, faggots, or bundles of sticks for our wood stove. So we cut them to the same size as our wood stove, put them in here, and then the rabbits peel the bark, the living bark off. This is not like dead old wood. This is like living branch wood that's either been browsed by the goats or places we had to trim around the landscape. And we put the branches in with the rabbits until they've eaten the bark off. And then we put it in a paper bag and save it for kindling for later. Our kindling. They kindle and then we get to kindle. And then they get a scoop of food a day if they're non-breeding. But since this mother is a nursing mother, she gets free choice pellets. The pellets are organic rabbit pellets sold in a 50-pound bag from the local feed store. And we go with pellets because we're asking our rabbits to produce a lot in terms of meat and in terms of babies. If they were wild rabbits, they'd be a lot thinner. They'd be eating only what they could forage, and they'd be producing far fewer rabbits. So we're going with pellets, and basically pellets are made out of alfalfa and sunflower seeds mixed together. And as we continue to experiment with how to feed our rabbits more from the land where we live, we're experimenting with growing some of our own feed, like barley and alfalfa, and harvesting grasses and drying it for winter hay. So as you can see, we forage some from the land, but they also get a ration of pellets every day. And here is one of the inevitable difficulties of raising any animal, is that some just don't make it. This little kit died probably last night and was found this morning. Didn't make it for whatever reason. And so we have a special thing that we do with babies that don't make it. And that's waiting for a little bit later in the day.
Rabbits have a very easy come, easy go kind of life cycle.
I do. And I love that you're working in harmony with those tendencies they mate all the time. And they have the ability to, but they also they eat and they fertilize, and it just seems like a very easy life.
So after the rabbits are about 4 weeks to 6 weeks old, we move them out of their mom's cage and they're weaned, And then they come out to these mobile rabbit pens, which are their grow out pens, and they grow for another 6 weeks. So 6 weeks plus 6 weeks, what is that, 12 weeks? No, they grow for another 8 weeks, 2 months, and we butcher them between 3.5 months and 4 months. When they have grown large enough that they're going to provide the size carcass, finished carcass weight that we want to harvest. And they also start to become sexually mature, and they will mate with each other in the same brood of rabbits. So each brood, each litter, I should say, sorry, gets its own mobile pen and lives together until it's time for harvest. And these rabbits are probably 2.5 months old, or, you know, about 10 weeks old, and are not quite ready for, let's see if somebody will let us take a look. So they're not quite ready for harvest yet, a little on the small side, but they're pretty close. And what we like to do is either pick them up by the scruff of their neck or pick them up by underneath their belly and just cradle them like a chicken so that their hind legs are nice and comfortable in my arm. And I've gotten the hang of actually holding them with my full arm and cradling them so I can do something with my other hand, like close the cage, or move around with them. And I kind of tuck their head in there so they feel secure. And I also kind of relax myself and relax my breathing, so because they can feel body to body what I'm feeling. And so I try to keep myself in a good space, I guess, around them so that they feel comfortable when they're with me. In the background, you might hear one of our chickens that's laying eggs in one of the rabbit nest boxes.
Oh, yes. The chicken with the raspy voice.
So you can see that these rabbits have been moved through this garden, which is a garden where we will grow a winter crop of beets. And in this garden last fall was planted mustard, arugula, crimson clover, and has other weeds like henbit or hedge nettle, chickweed, grasses. And most of these weeds and cover crop plants are edible to the rabbits. So they go through and they forage off of the garden ground, poop on it, and then we move them along every 2 or 3 days. And they also get as many pellets as they want because they're growing a meat rabbit body, and their water gets filled every day. So it takes somebody about an hour probably, or an hour and a half a day, one person, to take care of eight breeding females, 4 breeding males, and 4 or 5, maybe even 6 mobile pens of growers every day. So for a family of 12, we have one person who takes care of the rabbits, and they take about an hour and a half a day. So if we were down to like a single couple of rabbits, or like maybe one breeding pair and one breeding male, and one person taking care of that, it might only be 10 to 15 minutes a day of checking the food, checking the water, adding sticks to munch the bark off of, and getting fresh either grass or greens off of the pasture or hay.
It's so great to know that time can, I guess the statistics or so of what the time commitment would look like, and for you all who are harvesting on such a nice schedule, you've really gotten in tune with it. It's great to see, I guess, what you can achieve with just a couple of rabbits, and how that truly will grow regardless of if you're ready or not. but how they will just continue to just grow and grow.
Yeah, I kind of challenged myself to just grow it to our maximum capacity,
Nice.
and figured out what the system was, and then tracked it. So that's the other piece that I want to really mention, emphasize in our system, is we're tracking everything. We're tracking how much food we buy. We're tracking how many each breeding female produces in terms of how many in her litter, how many of those make it to butcher, what are their butcher weights. And so we found out that we pay about $4 a pound in organic rabbit pellet and about an hour a day to produce enough rabbits for us to eat probably 4 rabbits a week.
I think it was 1,000 pounds of rabbit meat last year.
We produced 1,000 pounds of rabbit meat.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
So we sold a lot to our friends and neighbors, and we ate a lot of rabbit meat. But if that 1,000 pounds, that's 3 pounds a day. So that's 1 rabbit a day
Wow.
that we were producing.
Mhm.
And so that's about $4 a pound in organic rabbit pellet and about an hour to an hour and a half a day of daily care,
That is so
with
amazing.
extra here and there. And that doesn't count butchering, which is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. And that means each breeding doe we had produced about 100 pounds of meat. Like if you look at the number of breeding
Oh.
does we had, each of those rabbits, each of those lady rabbits gave us 100 pounds.
Oh, that's
So
so
one thing I would encourage as we get into how do you start taking care of rabbits, if that's something that you're interested in, is take good notes on every stage of the process. And let's walk back through the rabbitry and show you some of the notes that we take. There's the chicken who thinks that he's a rabbit.
She does sound like a sweet little dinosaur.
Yes,
Here's
perfect.
the notes on who's next to Kindle. Here's the notes on who's in each of the mobile pens. And the calendar also tells us what to look for. When's the next breeding and who got bred last.
Also, do you want to mention the watering system?
Oh yeah, that's a good call. So we used to have the kind of waterers that are held on the side of the cage, which actually work really well for the mobile pens. The flip top ones are better than the ones that you have to unscrew the nozzle. If you have to unscrew the nozzle, then you got to unscrew the nozzle every single day, fill it up, screw the nozzle back on, put it back on the cage. So what we moved to in the rabbitry, since it's stationary, is we moved to this auto watering system that's a series of tubes and emitters. And the emitters, the rabbits know to just lick the little emitter point right there, and then water comes out of it. And so every day, this 5-gallon bucket gets topped off once a day, and it has a tube that goes to each individual cage, or hole, as they're called in the rabbitry world. And every once in a while, we got to clean the whole tube out and clean the bucket out. But that's pretty easy because we just leave a hose right here and fill it up. And then we take these watering cans around to the mobile pens, fill those up. We've also done it off of rainwater and used our rainwater exclusively for our rabbits, but we have to clean the bottles more often if we're using rainwater than if we're using tap water. So they drink few enough gallons that we just go with the hose water, the city water. But you can give them rainwater to drink.
I love
So,
when I
oh yeah, go ahead.
enter. Oh, sorry. It's always so hard to cut in on Zoom. I loved when I was walking around your farmstead yesterday, seeing all of the great watering and, water-wise, I guess, engineered watering holes and watering systems you've come up with all over the farm. And I just wanted to shout out your the great engineering that I see on your farm, and how that's a really essential piece of farming is understanding and maximizing off of the natural patterns of earth. And I love that, of course, y'all are doing it in such a sustainable way. Yeah, it was cool to see all the different little watering areas you had for the animals there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. Design is one of the funnest parts of the process. Thinking about how can we do this in a way that works with the energies that are coming into our system: water, sunlight, wind, noise, feed, animals, wild ones. How do we work with those inflow of energies and design in accordance with them? And then also in a way that makes sense spatially throughout our landscape and aesthetically too. I gotta live here every day. So digging a pond where the ducks are gonna walk, for instance.
Right on. Yeah,
So,
we need engineers and farmers to get together, always.
So if you were gonna raise rabbits, what are some considerations for a person just getting started in raising rabbits? Like, where do you get them? Where do you get them? What should you think about? What do you need to get started? I want to go over a couple of those things in case people are interested in that. Did I miss anything on the cycle of rabbit care other than butchering?
I did have a question that I could save for the end of the Q&A.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then we'll walk over to another rabbitry setup. I would encourage folks to look on to find a neighborhood place to get rabbits from. Like, we have 3 breeding rabbits for sale right now, a male and 2 females. And I just sold my friend 3 breeders last week, and they actually kindled their first successful litter early this week. I would encourage people to look around your neighborhood. Who are the people around you that raise rabbits? And especially people who have been doing it for a while probably have some pretty good breeding stock and some pretty good systems. So around here, Craigslist is a good one, or classified ads, or different farm bulletins or farm networks are a good place to ask for breeding stock. I mean, like I said, we got ours from our neighbor. And we sell them to other people who are interested in raising rabbits. So look around at what's available. What are the historic breeds that have been in the place that you live? Because it's different if you're in Africa or in England or in the Western United States or the Southern United States. Oh, I think that's the other thing I forgot about care too, is rabbits need shade, and they need dry and warm enough. But actually the limiting factor is rabbits getting too hot. So for us, that hoop house is really mostly about shade and rain protection, shade from the sun and then rain protection. And we stuck it in a place that gets a lot of natural shade from the alders and from the apple. But if you're raising rabbits in a place like southern Texas, maybe people want to even consider having their rabbits on the ground or under the ground. We have friends in California who raise their rabbits right on the ground, and they can burrow into the ground, which is a normal behavior of rabbits. For us in the Pacific Northwest, we don't get a whole lot of snow, and it's not super cold in the winter. So having an open rabbitry year round works for us. What's your climate, and what do the rabbits need to stay warm enough, dry enough, and cool enough are the considerations for where to put your rabbits and how to design the shelters. So one shelter that I designed right over here is we got a bunch of used cages, 2 foot by 2 foot cages, and my goal was to try to use what I could find at a hardware store and put together something that could be built in a day for somebody's backyard. And so I came up with this setup, which is all basic materials available from a hardware store. 6 cages spaced out, 4 T-posts, and a couple of metal bars across to hold it all up, and a lightweight roof on top. 5-gallon bucket waterer with the tube, and we call this the Rabbitry Annex. So in the rabbit world, you're going to have what comes out of them below it. So we designed this one to have it right next to the garden that wants to use that manure from the rabbits. And again, they have the slots for putting hay or greens in, and they each have a little feeder bin. And just the minimal amount of roofing to keep them dry and keep them shady. And they're on the north side of these maples. So this is a shady spot in the summertime and gets a little sunnier in the wintertime. So you only need really 1 cage, but if you're going to raise rabbits for meat, you need to breed the females somewhere. And so you're going to need at least 2 rabbits, a male and a female. I would suggest 2 breeding females and a male, and then some sort of pens either on the ground or above the ground, some sort of shelter for them. And we really like to move animals between spots to break up the parasite cycle, not let them basically live on their own poop for very long. So having some sort of mobile pen is also really helpful, I think, in consideration of your rabbit system.
I wanted to jump in and say it's 1:45, so we have 25 minutes, 10 of which will be Q&A, or reserved for that. And as people have questions, and if they have any, please do share them to the chat and I will send them over your way.
Okay, sounds good. So find your breeding stock, create your shelter, create your water system, figure out what you're going to feed them and how you're going to get what you're going to feed them. And then there's a learning curve involved with breeding them. Like, how do I know if it worked? And what do I do before they kindle? And I would suggest getting some sort of basic rabbitry guide and reading more about that, or looking up something online, or watching more in-depth YouTube videos on that, or visiting someone like us and having an interview of, like, you know, how does this work and what does this look like taking a little bit more of an in-depth class. But you can figure it out, and we did, on what does a successful breeding look like, how do I make a nest box, when do I put it in, is there anything I need to know about when it's working or not working. Mm-hmm. It's pretty simple, and they do a pretty good job. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add to that?
I would add that sometimes first-time rabbit moms are a little confused by the process. And so we give each new mom a chance to kind of test out her first litter. If she doesn't succeed, if she doesn't successfully raise babies the first time, we give her another try or two. And if she's still not getting the hang of it, then she goes to the crock pot. And we chose the American Chinchillas because they also have good mothering abilities. Some of them other meat breeds don't always. So, you know, and it varies even amongst our individual rabbits quite a bit.
Let's walk back over towards where we started.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions that relate to the rabbit tractor. Yeah. If it's convenient to go by one, so one question is what are the dimensions of the rabbit tractor to ensure you know, they're able to move around but also be confined?
So this one is 2 feet tall, but you could go shorter if you wanted. Sorry, this is going to be in feet, not in meters or centimeters. Feet and inches. This measurement is 3 feet wide, And this measurement, this particular one is a little less than, but most of them are 5 feet long, 3 feet wide, 2 feet tall. And those are commonly available materials. Here, 3 feet by 5 feet easily out of an 8-foot board, which is sold around here. That's why that choice.
Oh, we kind of lost that last part. Just the wind picked up right when you said that.
Yeah, what I was saying was 3 feet, 3 feet this way by 5 feet this way, cuts easily out of an 8-foot board, which is the dimension boards that are commonly available at lumber yards and hardware stores around here. So finding dimensions that work with the available materials would be my main suggestion. But this tractor size, 3 foot by 5 foot, works really well for a litter of up to even 10 or 12 we've had in there, but best a litter of 6 to 8. And a single rabbit like this male Assam can be on this spot for probably a week before he even needs to move feeding from this place.
Yeah. Also notice that all the wood is out of the reach of rabbits. There's no wood within rabbit chewing range.
Except for the wood that we put in there on purpose for that.
Those are great.
Do you want to talk about the curtain on the back too?
Oh yeah. And you'll notice this curtain is on the wrong side, so it was more photogenic for you all to see. But we have a shade cloth and a windbreak cloth on one side, because in the winter, the wind can be biting for them and they just need a little bit of extra protection. And in the summer, the sun can be a little strong, especially in the afternoon. So we put a shade cloth on that side, and this ends up usually facing south or west.
Nice. It's so great to know that they're really, you know, they're being taken care of. You guys want to keep them healthy and happy, and you can probably taste the difference.
They should only have one bad day.
Yeah. That's awesome, Alexia. I did have one more question about I guess the grazing pattern and what your plans are for that garden space, because they give so much fertilizer and give back to that little space with their natural tendencies. And yeah, I was curious how long you keep that space just for rabbits, or when you choose to move them again.
Yeah, so that particular garden that we visited, the one behind me, that's going to get rabbits until probably another 3 weeks until they finish mowing down or doing their best to mow that down. And then we're going to need to plant our fall beets in there. So it really depends on your timing. And we try not to leave them in any one spot for more than like 2 or 3 days, or until they graze that down and poop on it pretty well. And then we try not to revisit that spot until it's had a chance to grow back nicely. So it gets a rest period. Does that make sense? Does that kind of answer your question? Yeah,
and of course it comes back to people's timing and their plots that they want to grow. So I'm grateful you mentioned that too.
Yeah, so we're gonna kind of finish up right where we started. And this plum tree is actually our butchering site. And this may be the biggest single difficulty that people might have with choosing to care for rabbits. Cute meat, that's hard. You know, we get attached to animals. That's natural for people. And, you know, the ones that I've named and that I've taken care of over a lot of years, I don't really want to kill them. They're like friends. In fact, they become family in some respect. But I also know, as a rabbit eater and as a meat eater and as a person who butchers regularly and heartfully, that that I'm raising these animals for meat, and that I'm going to do my best to be respectful of them and their needs through the whole range of the process. And that I didn't make up this system about like, we got to kill to stay alive. Somehow that got made up for us. and we got to decide how we want to be with our food. And for me, it makes a lot of sense for my heart and for my body and for my landscape to be involved and connected with that process and to do it as heartfully as I can through that whole process. I am a meat eater. I'm going to hunt and I'm going to eat meat. That's what I've decided. I've taken time to be a vegetarian and a vegan for a number of years and felt how that felt to my body and tried to understand how that was for my landscape. And for me and for my system and for my place, it makes sense to eat meat. And so the rabbits meet their final day right here when we make a live, living, beautiful rabbit into meat to put in the freezer and or the crock pot and or the can or whatever way we're preserving. And we use this device to dispatch them. They're dispatched very quickly. And for me, I've learned to process rabbits now. When I first started, it was probably 20-30 minutes for me to process a rabbit. When someone who I'm teaching in one of our classes starts, it takes them between 30 minutes and an hour. For me now, I've done it enough times and taught enough people that it's about 8 minutes for me to go from live rabbit to in the bag, ready to go in the freezer. So that's a pretty, and that's without rushing or without like hurrying the process. That's just from getting the movements down. The other day, I taught one of our farm mates, a 10-year-old girl, how to do the process. And she did it by herself, pretty much, in about an hour and a half. So I think that pretty much anybody that wants to learn how to process rabbits can learn how to process rabbits. And we do it right here at this tree because it's a pleasant place to work. And this tree has seen a lot of animals come through. That's a whole nother topic and a whole nother day. And we actually teach in-person classes for that. There are YouTube videos about how to process a rabbit, and we've made videos on that. But I would suggest learning that in person from somebody who knows how to do it smoothly and well. Yeah, and I think that's mostly what I would say for now about processing. Oh, the other cool thing is that part of the outflows of raising rabbits are, people ask, well, what do you do with the hides and the heads and the feet and the entrails? And for us, we happen to have chickens who are another ally in our food system. And the chickens happily eat all of that. We cook it for about 15 minutes. And then the chickens are super happy to eat up all the entrails, eat up all of the feet, and even some fur. And so basically the rabbits go right back into the pasture through the chickens. Also, we've tanned rabbit hides and we've sold rabbit hides to other people who tan them. The thing is with young rabbits, the hides are very thin, and so they take more skill and more tenderness to tan well. But that's another outflow of the rabbit process is, what are you going to do with all the parts and how are you going to make that story beautiful for the whole rabbit? For us, the heads go out into the woods in a little bit of a ceremony that makes a whole circle process for our hearts, really, and for our ecosystem. And the rest of the body gets cooked and goes out to the chickens. And sometimes we sell the hides. So that's a little bit of the full story of a rabbit from start to finish here at Hawthorn Farm. And yeah, I guess we could see if there's any questions or if Alexia wants to chime in with anything. Point.
Well, that was just a really beautiful way to definitely wrap it up. And I loved the whole process of the closed loop system to, just to honor their life and honor yourselves too, and the emotions that come up through that process. And it's probably something that I get asked a lot too is, oh, do you on the farm, do you all slaughter the animals? And it's a part of, it is a part of living. I feel like if you're able to do it in this way that's truly sustainable, it is making a better environmental and honestly social impact, I think, versus having it all be really polluting and not to green shame or anything, but it is, this is just definitely a very sustainable way to go about consuming meat. So it's an honor to learn this process with you all, and I'm so glad that people on the call are all really interested in trying to live this way. And it's just great to beautiful wrap up, Daniel. Good job.
Thank you. I will just say on the horizon for us is, how do we feed our rabbits without buying pellets? That's really our next kind of regenerative and sustainable question is, do we sprout grains? Do we grow more sunflowers here? Do we have fewer rabbits and choose to eat less meat? How do we bring it even closer to home and know the full story of even what our animals are eating? That's our next horizon for regenerative and sustainable.
That's awesome. And I guess also I love to shout this out whenever I see your farm, but all of the ways you're able to upcycle and I guess just create systems with used materials is always really great. So even if it comes in a bag, I know you'll find a way to make it a part of a part of the journey sustainably.
Yes. Yeah. Fun. It's such a great puzzle. Yeah.
Yes. Definitely a puzzle. And it's so rewarding. There's so many thank yous in the chats that are coming from all of our attendees, and we thank you too for joining. Well, I guess we should open the platform up for any additional Q&As that weren't addressed in the live event. And for folks who have to take off at this time, we want to again thank you for joining us. And here's a plug to join us next month on June 12th, where we are going to learn, I believe, from Alexia. Yes, we're going to do virtual homesteading greens all winter long, which is so important, and I can't wait to learn from you about that. So let's see if we've got.
I just saw a question pop up from Jenny and James.
I can start to answer that one.
Perfect.
Do the mothers kill their babies? I'm guessing you mean the mother rabbits. They do. Not very often, but they will. So a wild rabbit will try to make the most wise investment of energy as possible. So if a wild rabbit on a nest gets startled by a predator, or finds that a predator like a crow or a raccoon or a fox or a coyote has found its nest, it will immediately abandon ship on that and eat the calories from the babies, basically eat the babies, consume them again, find a new nest, and give birth at a more opportune location and time, because she wants to give the best chance for her progeny to survive. And so that means she's got to harvest the calories from the ones that weren't going to make it, rather than give those calories up to a predator. So in our domestic system, every once in a while, rabbits who are new at giving, like the new moms who are new to the process, or if a rabbit gets startled, or let's say a predator goes through in the night, or some kid runs through there like yelling or screaming, and the new mom gets startled right at the wrong time, we have had rabbits eat their young. And we've also had rabbits have trouble in the giving birth process. Or if a rabbit is may not have her full nutrition, she will sometimes kill the babies.
It's usually not all of them, and it'll often be a runty one in the batch. We've noticed this general tendency.
Sometimes out of ineptness or space too, she'll squish one. Or sometimes she'll give birth to them out of the nest box, you know, and if it's a cold winter night and it was midnight when she gave birth, we sometimes won't catch it in time to rescue those young. So there are factors, and we have lost a lot of them over the years, but I would say it's only in the like 5%, maybe at the most, of the rabbits that are born get lost along the way.
And there are things you can do, like having deep nest boxes, or nest boxes that actually are connected to holes in the floor of the cage, so that it's harder for babies to get up and out. Mother rabbits have zero instinct for putting babies back in a nest. Like, they naturally give birth in burrows underground. So like moving babies just isn't a thing for them. So if a baby is like attached to a mom's teat and she jumps out of the nest box and a baby winds up outside, that's a cause for casualty. So the deep nest boxes or nest boxes in the holes in the floor can help.
And, you know, going through the rabbitry, we typically have someone going through every 12 hours at least. So twice a day. And the person who in the evening just does a check to see, is there enough water? Are there any babies out? How are they doing on the greens? You know, watch your system and take feedback from your system, basically. So the morning person is checking all that after the night, and the evening person is checking that after a day.
Yeah.
So hopefully they get eyes on them every 12 hours at least. Just saw another question flash there, but I didn't read it.
Yes, Jenny and James also asked, our two rabbits are tricky to pick up. Do you have any tips? Yeah,
so you got to start really young and habituate them to human touch, or just like making relationship with any other being, like you don't want to touch their face first, like when you first meet somebody. So I'm answering this maybe not specifically to you, but broadly for people who might be interested. So going slow and building trust and rapport over time is helpful. And starting young is also helpful. So every time you put like a little bit of sunflower seeds in there, leaving the cage open and just sitting there with them for a little while, or, you know, just reaching in there and putting your hand in there at first. And then maybe, you know, like touching their hindquarter a little bit after that. And then maybe one pet, and just like gently working your way up to grabbing them out of their cage and bringing them to the male to breed. You know, it's kind of alarming. You could imagine like meeting someone for the first time. You don't want to like have them touching your ears or your face, but the kids do it. So that's also what's helpful about having kids around, is they just go and handle the animals all the time and habituate them to human touch.
And our rabbits, it's another thing I love about the chinchillas, is that they do get tame very fast, and they do love, you know, a scratch behind their neck. And all of our bucks especially will just come up and get pets and like not want you to close the cage until they get more pets. Yeah.
But I will say, Jenny and James, we've had rabbits that will not let you in their cage without putting up a fuss, that we got from someone else, that somebody else raised that breeder. And you just had to wear gloves every time you went in there, and just respect, like, okay, this one is going to be fierce. And I guess that's just her personality. She actually eventually softened after 2 or 3 years of living here, but she was the one where we wrote in red ink on the cage, like, for visitors, warning, this rabbit will attack your hand.
Great mom, like great producer, nice rabbit. You know, she did the job. She just wasn't interested in having anybody pet her. Okay.
Wear gloves and long sleeves is what I do when I'm handling the rabbits, of all ages and all temperaments and all sizes.
Yeah.
There was a breed of chicken my boyfriend and I were really excited to look at. They were called Freedom Rangers. Freedom Rangers. They had statistics, which I thought were kind of funny, just like friendliness, it was 1 star of 5. Survival rate, 5 stars, because they are gonna fight until they can't.
Yep,
Which was,
I used to raise Freedom Rangers.
you have? Was
Yeah,
that kind of your experience too?
Hmm.
They're hardier than Cornish crosses, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. And can you share again one more time where you recommend people find these breeds or the right breeds?
There are a lot of local rabbit associations that are often helpful. The ARBA is a really helpful place. And I've gone to rabbit shows and just walked around, and if any rabbits caught my eye, just talk to the people who are showing those rabbits. Usually people who are raising rabbits have extras. Need to move some along. So we got our first American chinchillas from a woman in Canada. So just finding rabbit shows, finding lists of local rabbit breeders. And I would say don't get too attached to any one breed in particular. We love the American chinchillas. They're a rare breed. It's great to promote them. And to get started with the process of rabbit raising, like, you can try it with whatever's available and dial in your systems and just learn about the species. At least my method, as you can probably tell, is just like, let's just get the critters and learn from them and go from there. And Daniel's like, okay, well, how can we set up the best system to take care of these creatures? So I would say just go ahead and start with whatever's there. And you might even wind up breeding your own special strain of rabbit that really fits your management style and place.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Craigslist around here, classified ads, and local farms and farmers.
Mm-hmm.
Go to somebody at a farmer's market who's already selling rabbit meat.
Those are great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I do also love how once you start a project, once you have the rabbit, you're like, well, we must find a place for them now. So it breeds that urgency, which is great. Definitely make sure you can start and finish the project.
Yeah, on most things with the homestead, I would encourage fail faster. Like, just get started, like, work out the kinks. It'll work out. There are some heartaches and heartbreaks and failures along the way, but it works itself out if you just keep at it on all these different facets of the food system.
Absolutely. And failure does not mean you won't be successful. It is inherent to success. You have to fail. We've got to keep that in mind. Well, I guess with 1 minute left, I feel like this was probably a good place to end. And I'm so glad for all these extra questions. I think this time edition was really helpful. So thank you for everyone participating in that. And yeah, thank you so much, Alexia and Daniel, for your contribution to educating our communities, and then doing this for yourselves and for people you love to just learn how to be sustainable and work in harmony with the beautiful things around us. And the bonus of having cute animals is just really amazing. Well, thank you all so much for joining, and we'll see you next month again for the Growing Greens All Winter Long class. That is one I'm so excited to watch because I need some greens.
Hi. Hey, thank you all.
Thank you all. Thanks, Rianne.
Of course, thank you.
Soon.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
You too.
Thanks.